Thank you very much. Thanks very much. Pam just pretty much laid out my whole talk. So anyway, we all know that our food system is broken. It's very much broken. We cannot continue dumping the kind of pesticides, fertilizers, and pollution from transportation and production into our natural environment and expect our natural environment to continue to feed us. It's just not going to happen. We can't do it anymore like we used to be able to do. So the plant seeks a new way forward, a way to use what we have, not to wish we had something different, but to take the things that we have now and use them productively. And that can be structures like old factory buildings, it can be materials, it can be people, it can be gases, it can be everything that's around us, and primarily our amazing waste stream. And that's our richest source, really, is our waste stream. So where did this all start? Bubbly Dynamics. That's the affectionate name of the Chicago Sustainable Manufacturing Center, which is a green business incubator in the stockyards and the Central Manufacturing District, actually. And it was a burnt-out shell that was about as bad as a building can get, with whole courses of brick peeling away from the sides. It was occupied by a white power biker gang, and so they were a little tough, including Googs, the Boob, Cowboy, Mac, and Santa Claus. And that's actually, it says on the wall there, Goog's office, as a matter of fact. And so I had to get rid of them. Luckily, Cowboy managed to get rid of himself. He ratted out Joe Calabrese, who was noted mafioso who went up a number of years ago. And Cowboy was being protected by Joe Calabrese. And so once he did that, that was pretty much the end of Cowboy running that building with an iron fist. So how do we do this? Well, we built a community. I'm a 25-year now commuter cyclist, and so I know a lot of other bicyclists. And the gentleman on the left here is Matt Bergstrom. He was the founder of the Rat Patrol, and so he's a good friend of mine. And the Rat Patrol was all about going through the alleys, finding junk, and turning it into something productive, bicycles in this case. So we had the first rat hole in the basement of Bubbly Dynamics, and this was where all of these build days happened, and we taught people how to use welders and how to do all sorts of fun stuff. At the same time, we were building a community of like-minded people who liked to find trash and do something productive with it. I'm a dumpster diver, I admit it. With that, we also brought in other groups like the Cycling Sisters, teaching women skills, how to repair their own bicycles, not being dependent, really good things. And we brought in friends. This is my neighbor Lauren, a good friend who was staring at a computer all day. And so she came and did great work. Here she's drilling out new window frames, getting ready to install those window frames. As the building got farther and farther along, started to do a lot more bartering and rent trades. This gentleman is Yuval Awatsu, and he is a fabricator. And right here, he's building the new railings in the entrance of that building out of tubing that we salvaged from a brewery and scrapped restaurant sinks. That's the kind of thing that we do a lot of. Here we are building the green roof up there. We got some money from the city in the form of a small business improvement fund grant, which is a pretty good program, to buy the materials, but all of the labor was done by volunteers. And this is the planting diagram. That's my daughter Zoe when she was a baby. And on the right-hand side that's the diagram that we used when we planted the individual sedum plants. We put in 9,600 sedum plants of 8 varieties, according to those charts, like a giant dot matrix printer starting at the top and going down the roof like that and putting all of the pixels of Zoe's face in there. This is what it looked like from Google Maps. And unfortunately, Google just took this down a couple months ago and put up a picture taken in the winter, so you can't see Zoe anymore. But that was a fun project. And trying to make sustainability really fun and exciting is a big part of how we get so many people involved. So the building now has been 100% occupied right through the whole recession. We have a waiting list to get in for spaces. There are about 16 individual companies. That's good, that's good. 16 companies employing about 35 people total, full-time jobs in that facility. So that went from about as bombed out as a building gets to a really productive place full of fabricators and furniture makers and some office space, a lot of different uses in there. This is one of the fabrication shops, for instance. Bike frames are being built there. There's a lot of work going on. We have a collaborative space upstairs that's used for meetings and events, things like that too, that's available to all of the tenants free of charge. So that project finished up. Took a long time to do because it was all done with waste stream materials and whatnot. It takes longer, right? Once that was finished, I wanted to build on some of those concepts and those ideas. How do we go to the next level? How do we set a goal that's much higher? How do we start to really tap into those waste stream resources? So we were already doing things like working with distributors, drywall that was going to a landfill because it had broken corners and water damage, that kind of thing. Insulation with torn packages that was going to a landfill because it wasn't saleable. That was kind of low-hanging fruit. But how do we start to get to where we're really tapping into that waste stream? That was the big question. So started thinking about, not about bacon specifically, but started thinking about how are we going to do that and what would a facility look like? What would a building or a place look like that could get to net zero and that could really be powered entirely by waste where we're just closing loops like mad? So I found this plant. This is the former Pure Foods meatpacking plant. They made bacon, they made hams, they made corned beef, turkeys, that kind of stuff for about 85 years, 24/7 in this building. There were about 400 jobs in this facility when it shut down in 2007, shut down overnight. And they didn't want to, but it just was not economically feasible anymore for the company. So the good thing, the only good thing that came out of that was that this building went for cheap. And I only paid about $525,000 for a almost 95,000 square foot building on 3 acres. $525,000, you can spend that on a house pretty quickly in Chicago. Inside, it has spaces that look a lot like this. Every part of the building is different, but it's a fascinating place that's rich in resources. And the broker described it, though, as a pile and a strip and rip. You strip out the stainless steel and you rip it down, and that was the perceived value. That's why it went so cheap. So we started right in dismembering and dismantling and starting to salvage what we could inside of this building. And in many cases, I had volunteers or tenants who later came on staff, our very, very tiny staff. Dave is one of those folks right here, using a 4-foot pipe wrench to take some pipes apart that really don't want to come apart. We cut up these smokehouses here, these stainless smokehouses. We're using the ends as bathrooms and offices, and the parts that, like the side sheets, we're using as backsplashes for countertops and, covering tables with them. It's a food-grade material. Messy old place, it's a derelict building, right? So, but the embodied energy in a building that's perceived as derelict is still there. The concrete and the steel that's there still has a tremendous amount of value no matter how bad it looks. So here we are digging away at it. These are all volunteers and stripping off layers and layers of insulation inside of the building. This was a USDA grade building, so luckily all the asbestos and lead paint was long gone because it was a food production plant. So that was a great starting point for us. Here's Professor Blake Davis from IIT, who's actually very good at jackhammering. And we put volunteers to work doing all sorts of things. As we go through the build out, there's less demolition to do and a lot more construction to do. And so, at this point of the game, we're mostly in the construction portion of it, which is less fun in some ways. So what are we trying to do in this building? Well, one of the things is that we're incubating food businesses, and that's critical. Not only is this a vertical farm where we're growing produce, actually there are 5 separate farms in the building growing produce, but we're building out kitchen spaces. We have bakeries going, we have a kombucha brewery, and we're going to have a whole lot more kitchens, incubating jobs in the space, including shared kitchens, 4-station shared kitchen, which we're doing the fundraising now for that. This is one of the bakeries, and We have, actually in Peerless Bread and Jam that's in the building, we have an oven that Lauren Bushnell has just finished that's going to burn briquetted distiller's grains that are a waste product internally in the plant. I'll get a little bit more to the loops that we're closing in a few minutes. The farms. So Galen Williams spoke earlier today from Sky Greens, and he's the first licensed indoor farm in the city of Chicago, which was a battle, let me tell you. That was not easy, but we got it. We did it. And he grows microgreens and sprouts. Oh, that's a lot of text. So how are we doing this? Well, one of the things that's most important to us is telling people about what we're doing and how we're doing it, and trying to get information into our community, to the people that are out there that can benefit from it, community members. We do that by having regular events in the building, by showcasing work, in this case of students, from architecture students from IIT. This was a project about how the plant relates to its community, to the back of the yards, or back of the yards, 47th and Ashland. How can we not be Spaceship Northside, a bunch of crazy people that come into the community and do something wacky? We can't do that. We need to be of and part of the community. So this is, that's one of the main things that that we struggle with. It's very difficult. At the heart of the plant is the anaerobic digester. So I said we're going to be net zero. Maybe I didn't. Net zero is very, very difficult to get to. But you can do it because we are surrounded by waste. So on Friday of this coming week, or of this week, we are going to be breaking ground on an anaerobic digester that's going to consume 32 tons a day of food waste. A small percentage of that's going to come from the plant because we don't make 32 tons of waste a day, or at least we better not. The rest of the waste is going to come from neighboring businesses, from breweries, from the fat rendering plant that's next door, from produce distributor, Testa Produce, one of our great neighbors down there in the stockyards. And all of that material is going to come in, get digested in a plug flow digester, making biogas and making saleable material, making digestate, which is it's going to get blended into soils. We have a customer who wants to buy all of the waste from the digester already. And there's the liquid digestate, which is also saleable as a fertilizer. The digester makes biogas. The biogas will get burnt in a turbine. This will explain it. So if you follow all of those little lines around everywhere, you'll see that that just about everything that's a waste product circles around internally, and then food flies out the sides of it, basically.
And beer flies out.
And beer flies out too, and then some of it flies back in again in the toilet. So the digester makes the biogas, which will be burnt in a turbine, in a generator set, that will make electricity, enough electricity to power the whole facility, about 340 kilowatt hours of power. That's enough to power the facility night and day, 24/7. The waste of making that, this is called cogen, or in our case trigen. The waste heat from making that electricity, and anytime you make electricity, mostly what you're making is heat. That can be very productively used. And in our case, we're going to be running most of it into an absorption chiller, which is a very old invention, that will make cold water. And the cold water is going to recirculate through the existing ammonia refrigeration, former ammonia refrigeration system in the building, and also to energy recovery ventilators on the roof so that we can freshen up the air inside at the prescribed rates. And we'll get enough waste heat to cool and heat the whole facility and heat hoop houses in the yard from the waste of other people. And that's the key to it, is finding a spot on that sweet waste stream. This is a steam boiler moving in that will take the exhaust of the turbine and make steam, which will run into the chiller and do some other fun things with. All of this is a dual structure. So we have Bubbly Dynamics, which is the theoretically for-profit end, and then we have Plant Chicago, which is the nonprofit side. Plant Chicago drives the whole thing and runs the show. Bubbly allows us, though, by having a for-profit side, that allows us to get certain grants that aren't available to nonprofits, like the money from the Department of Community and Economic Opportunity, which is paying for about half of our energy system. And those kind of grants we never would have gotten as a nonprofit. So we use that dual structure. The nonprofit side is all about finding ways to repurpose what we have, derelict buildings, people, etc., and making it productive. Meanwhile, teaching others how to do it. So we're building an online toolkit. This is a lot of work. Building an online toolkit to tell people, here's what you look for in a building. This is the kind of waste that's out there. This is what you can do with it. And so we're trying to make that information freely available. We're also trying to incubate local entrepreneurs and food businesses. People from our community. The shared kitchen, for instance, is going to be focused on disadvantaged women from back of the yards. We'll have a sliding scale to work in that kitchen. We are providing office space for those kitchens where we're encouraging people to be collaborative, because ultimately these very small 1- and 2-person businesses aren't competing with each other. They're competing with the larger world of food industry and agribusiness and all of those things, which are very difficult to compete with. So what we find at the Sustainable Manufacturing Center at the first building is that the more people talk to each other, the better they do, and the more work they share, and the more collaboration they do. And so we find ways to jam them all together and say, okay, here's a kitchen you can use for creating your lunch. It's not a licensed kitchen, but it's a place where you can sit and eat, and everybody's here, and you all should talk to each other, and that's a big part of what we're doing. So one of the main things in the farming side of this is the building's divided roughly in thirds. 1/3 farm, 1/3 food business incubator, which includes a commercial brewery that isn't quite in yet. We're working on that. And 1/3 education. The farming side will have about 32,000 square feet, eventually, of mostly for-profit aquaponic and hydroponic farms. And so we're incubating these other businesses because ultimately they're the ones that are going to make the financially replicable model that's going to go out there and encourage other people to take much bigger facilities and turn them into farms. Again, we want to grow the food locally to eliminate the pollution and the energy in its production. So the more we can do to help these small businesses figure it out, and they all talk to each other, they share ideas, and they say, this isn't working, how do you do it? Oh, this works, okay. And that kind of collaboration makes an enormous difference. So aquaponics is at the heart of that, because aquaponics is a really efficient way to grow produce inside. So we use fish. We use tilapia in our case. You can use a lot of other fish too, but the tilapia are fast growing and they thrive in those conditions. In aquaponics, you feed the fish, and the fish feed the plants, and the whole system feeds you. Our systems in the basement in the research farm, the nonprofit farm, we only add about 1 gallon or 2 gallons a week of water. And these are great big systems. That's just for evaporative losses. The water is continuously cleaned by the plants and by the bacteria that live in these systems. By stacking these tighter and tighter inside of that space and using the advantages of being in an insulated building as opposed to a greenhouse or a skyscraper, kind of a vertical farm, we can actually get to the efficiencies that we have to get to make the economic model work. And our tenants are proof of that. That was the goal. As a nonprofit firm, we're not making any money, believe me, but the tenants are starting to. We use tanks. These are cast-offs from one of our neighbors, a great company, Schultze and Birch Baking. They have a director of sustainability on staff. They give us all of these food-grade totes. These are available anywhere in the world. They're a standard thing. Growing beds, right now we've got 3 raft systems in the basement, 1 vertical system, some flood and drain beds. We have a variety of different systems. Some of them built by IIT students, another one built by students from UIC. I'm actually an alumnus or alumni, whatever, of this school. I was here for 10 years, I have to admit. I liked it, it was fun. So in this bed we're growing arugula. Those are just plain old fluorescent lights. These fixtures are $21 each. Okay, we also use LEDs at about $1,000 each, but the prices are coming way down. We have a plasma light, we have induction lights. So our farm is about experimentation and figuring out what's going to work and how is this actually going to happen. So again, with aquaponics, the fish are in tanks. The water from the fish tanks goes through a sedimentation filter where we pull off the solids. The solids are fed to our soil-based plants. There, from that filter, the water goes to a biofilter, which is where most of the bacteria live. That's where the most dissolved oxygen is. And the bacteria are similar to what's in your stomach and what's in the digester, and they convert the ammonia, which is the fish urine, into nitrites and nitrates, and that's what the plants eat. So the water goes round and round and round. Our community that we're building here is not just the businesses inside. It has to extend outside of the boundaries of the plant. And so we started running classes. We actually ran classes for minority students in science and technology. We got a tiny little grant to do that. And we're trying to expand the curricula so that we can teach everything from children up through professionals in sustainability, food systems, obesity, all of the issues that we touch on at the plant, energy systems, and make the information available. We have an outdoor farm that's easily visible and viewable from the street. We're getting ready to run organic gardening classes. We're intending to do classes for people in the neighborhood. This is kale. What do you do with kale? And show people ways to prepare the food that they can grow on their own sites, on their own yards, ways to grow in brownfield sites. We also are doing work with vermicomposting, and Nature's Little Recyclers is one of our businesses in the basement. We're looking at ways to take algae, feed it to worms, and get to a point where we can get more omega-3s in our farm-raised fish. So we're doing all of these experiments internally and trying to make that information as widely available as possible. So part of that is working with elected officials, and actually we've had tremendous support from the city. It's been a great working relationship. And they recognize that what we're doing is pushing some boundaries, and to their credit, they've given us the room to do that, which is a wonderful thing. And I think there's an awful lot of great stuff going on in Chicago right now, and I think we're coming up with some solutions. Just have to make them stick and make them replicable. So with that, we're probably just going to go right into questions, because I'm sure there's going to be a whole lot of questions. We haven't even touched on the financing for all of this. There's a lot of things that we can talk about. But I do encourage you to go to our website. We give tours 3 days a week, Monday, Thursday, and Saturday at 2 o'clock. You can come and learn more about what we're doing and get involved. There's always room for volunteers. So, thanks.